So picking up where last week's requested review left off, we're going to be looking at the video game adaptation of the movie Looney Tunes Back in Action, once again requested by Michael Ogude. Now before we begin, let's look at the interesting history Looney Tunes has gone through in the world of video games. Since the 80s and 90s, tons of game development studios have churned out Looney Tunes games, and as a result, we got really weak titles like Bugs Bunny's Birthday Blowout and Crazy Castle to Roadrunner on NES. Though there are the occasional gems like Roadrunner Death Valley Rally, and especially Bugs Bunny Lost in Time on PlayStation 1, it's really a two-way street. Some good games and some bad games have come from this franchise. But most importantly, during the effort to make Looney Tunes seem cool and hip in the 90s, they made a video game, along with the other merchandise, to help promote the Space Jam movie. It was developed by Acclaim for the PlayStation 1 and Sega Saturn, so naturally, once you get to Looney Tunes Back in Action, they made sure to make a video game tie-in for that movie too. It was developed for the PlayStation 2, Game Boy Advance, and the GameCube. In keeping with MediaWiz tradition, we're going to be looking at the GameCube version of this game because, yeah, it's kind of a thing we do here. Though interestingly, this is one of the few movie-based games that I've done a video on that wasn't done by THQ. No, it was published in-house with Warner's video game division, Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, though the main developers were Warthog Games, a now-defunct game company that had a huge hand in Warner cartoon game tie-ins from Tiny Toons to Animaniacs, along with some other tie-in games for well-known franchises. They were bought out a couple of times over before they eventually went out of business in 2006. Not to mention, one of the other developing companies here is Electronic Arts. Yes, really. EA had a hand in making a Looney Tunes game. But you know what? Let's be fair. Let's go into this with an open heart and an open mind. This is Looney Tunes Back in Action on GameCube. Okay, so since this is a 3D rendered game, the graphics are probably going to be dated by today's standard, but who knows? Maybe they won't be that bad, right? Oh god, what is that? What is that? What the hell is that? Let's just see how the rest of the game is. So the game begins with a fake movie opening, depicting Elmer Fudd as some evil clown supervillain, and Daffy Duck shows up on the scene as Duck Danger, and hey, wait a minute, this is just the original opening for the movie, before they changed it to the throwback to the Rabbit Fire shorts. Then again, the movie did go through rewrite after rewrite after rewrite before it was officially greenlit, so that probably didn't help much. Anyway, Daffy's movie pitch gets cut off by one of the Warner Brothers, saying that he's not cut out for action films. But Daffy reveals he got his hands on the real Blue Monkey Diamond, thinking it was a prop at a pawn shop. And then in enters the chairman of Acme, who says he wants the diamond for world domination and turning the world's population into monkeys.
I began by taking over the studio that gave my company such a bad name. And now, with this diamond, I can turn everyone into monkeys and conquer the world, starting with the two of you!
Why does he look less like Steve Martin and look more like the farmer from Shaun the Sheep? You know what? Maybe it's a good thing there's no CGI Brendan Fraser and Jenna Elfman in this game, if the human characters are going to be looking like this. The diamond gets stolen by a monkey that crashes in, he just pisses off back to Acme, and now it's up to the Toons to save the day. Well, Bugs wants to save the world, but Daffy just wants the diamond. Leading us into the first level, Daffy chases the monkey throughout the Warner Brothers studio. It's here where we get into the gameplay. For the most part, the game plays out like a collect-a-thon platformer where you have to collect various items, like monkeys. Some you can buy from Foghorn Leghorn, who appears periodically.
I done caught this thing and was gonna keep it for a pet, but he's got a mouth like an outboard motor. Can you take him off of my hands? I got a fuzzy thing for sale if you got some money for me.
Oh my god, Foghorn Leghorn's officially gone into the corrupt world of illegal animal smuggling. You can also collect coins that help you buy costumes, which come in handy in certain areas throughout each level, as well as statues of Michigan J. Frog. Collect enough of those, and you get an extra monkey. There's also birdseed you can collect, which is used to open a Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner minigame. I'll mention the minigames a little bit later, because there's a lot of them in this thing. In the main levels, you can alternate between Bugs and Daffy, and one thing I can appreciate is they give them different abilities, so there's more of a reason to switch between them. Well, it's certainly a step in the right direction compared to some other games where you can alternate between characters and they didn't give them any special moves. Bugs can double jump while Daffy can fly and swim. They also get certain accessories with their costumes, as well as pull out weapons which they can use to hit enemies. Not kill them, just stun them. It's one of those kind of games. You can even do this roll attack. Not really sure why, other than other games like Sonic were doing it at the time, but I'll take it. All of this is good and makes for good gameplay mechanics, but I have one complaint. Bugs and Daffy never stop talking. Yeah, it's one of those games where you could just take a couple steps forward and the character just starts yapping.
We ain't getting in there while the faucet's running, that's for sure. Can't you do anything by yourself? Hey, controller hog, why don't you let someone else give it a try? Jump! Boy, if I had a nickel for every time I studied the nose of a giant stone monkey. Over to you, Daff. Hurry up and get in your bubble. When I get the diamond, I'm gonna buy me some dignity.
Though I guess it could be worse. It could be Bubsy 3D. At least this game looks like it was mostly rendered. So as the level goes on, you try to collect monkeys and land yourself into a bunch of different mini-games, like stopping Sylvester from catching Tweety, dodge a security guard Elmer Fudd, race around in golf carts against a bunch of kids lobbing bombs at you, unflood the studio by unplugging drains. Very slowly, mind you. You're not dodging enemies or projectiles or anything like that. It's just really tedious as you go from plug to unplug them. And going back to the Elmer Fudd minigame, you're going to just be button mashing a lot in this level just to get out of his grip. That's basically how the entire game plays out. You explore a variety of different areas, collecting as many items as you possibly can, and just beat as many mini-games until you move on to the next level. You do this for 5 levels total, and you have yourself a Looney Tunes game. On to level 2, we're in France, even though that didn't come until much later in the movie itself, but whatever. The platforming is a lot more apparent in this level, and honestly, the controls are pretty stiff. Not unplayable, but you don't have much range when you're jumping from platform to platform. I mean, come on, I'm playing as a rabbit. Jumping is one of the things that they're biologically built to do. This shouldn't be that hard. And get ready for more of this. There's lots of it throughout this stage. For that matter, for most of the coming stages, too. Aside from that, you get a minigame where you're riding a bull. Oh, it's kind of like that one Bugs Bunny cartoon where Bugs was in the middle of a bullfight. Which is odd because you're playing as Daffy in this stage.
I've changed my mind. Let me off! You really took the bull by the horns, and I mean that literally.
And then you round off this level with a tennis-like minigame where you have to swat these bombs back towards an army of Elmer Fudd clones. Though not as weird as this one part of the level where you have to switch these signs over so that they don't say duck season or rabbit season. On to level 3, Las Vegas. You do more platforming, finding monkeys and frog statues, and even more minigames. This time we get a pretty good minigame involving Daffy, Cottontail Smith, and Nasty Canasta floating on balloons. It's pretty fun. It doesn't go on too long. Another minigame has a really good setup, but a kind of mediocre execution. It's a minecart level where you have to chase one another and dodge bombs and pick up balloons as you go. The gameplay in here isn't bad, but what weighs it down is that the track repeats itself until you collect every single one of the balloons. It becomes a little monotonous after a while. And then there's this minigame where Daffy has to get into a boxing match with this guy. Much like that Elmer and Bugs minigame from level 1, a lot of it just comes down to button mashing. I had no real set controls for this level and I still somehow beat it.
We gotta get to the super secret alien research facility, Area 52.
On to the obligatory space-themed level you saw in a lot of 2000s cartoon games. This stage goes on for a very long time. There are a few mini-games here and there, but unlike some of the other levels we've had so far, this one feels like it just goes on forever as Bugs jumps around this laboratory. Plus, this just reminds me I could be playing Bugs Bunny Lost in Time instead. That did the whole Crash Bandicoot-style platformer thing much better in comparison. Hell, even the minigames in this level go on forever. There's this turret minigame where you have to protect Daffy from Martians by blasting them. Yeah, why Daffy is running right towards these things that want to kill him, and why Marvin is blasting his own lackeys instead of at the duck that he's after is beyond me. If you're able to beat this level, then you're on to the last location and final stage of the game, the Blue Monkey Diamond Temple in Africa. Oh, but wait, before we get to the last level of the game, you want to see that Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner minigame I mentioned earlier? Well, here it is. You gotta keep up with the Roadrunner, chasing after him on an Acme rocket, all the while dodging traffic. This might look easy, but believe me, it's not. You don't have to win these stages, as they are optional depending on if you collect enough birdseed to unlock them in the main game, but these are surprisingly hard for a game marketed towards kids. The only plus is if you're able to successfully beat these bonus stages, you get an extra monkey. So these levels are really for completionists who want to make sure they've collected every last monkey in the game. Enough of that, let's just wrap this up. The final stage has us wandering through a jungle and a temple that holds the blue monkey diamond. All the level amounts to is platforming as Bugs, while in between we get a Taz minigame. And then we get the other big change from the movie, the ending. You see, the movie's original ending involved evil Steve Martin getting eaten by a giant de-evolved Tweety Bird dinosaur. Much like the superhero bit in the opening cutscene, they probably didn't cut it out of the movie when they were developing this game, hence why it's still here. But what makes this such an off-putting final boss fight, aside from Tweety's weird 3D dinosaur model, is the controls. They don't tell you what the controls are right away, so you're just going to be doing a lot of button mashing until you finally land some hits on this monkey golem creature.
Hit him with pow! Hit him with pow!
I'm trying every single button on the controller, Daffy, now shut up! Once you finally knock the thing into lava, which is weird because in the cutscene it just shows it falling down.
So that's it? It's over? Well, that was sort of anticlimactic.
I agree. The chairman is crushed like the Wicked Witch of the West in Wizard of Oz, everyone is turned back to normal, and the crew celebrates.
I believe that today Warner Brothers has discovered a new action hero, and we're going to be making a lot of movies together.
Right! And you can expect big box office from me, Mr. Warner.
Take a bow, Tweety.
Tweety? For he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, which nobody can deny, and many more.
Right. Anyway, that was Looney Tunes Back in action on GameCube, and, it's a video game, alright? The graphics are, well, passable for the tunes, but pretty bad on the human characters. The gameplay isn't the worst, but it's weighed down by levels that go on too long, and minigames that range from easy, to good, to crazy difficult, to incredibly played out. Excluding the obvious changes, most of this fares up fine as an adaptation for the movie, specifically with the location design. The controls range from stiff yet playable to non-stop button mashing, but after a while it does feel like each level meanders into a bunch of different mini-games until you just move on to the next stage. As annoying as some of the things were in this game, there was enough that kept me playing it all the way through, so in that regard, it's far from the worst movie tie-in game I've looked at, but I'm not sure if I'll be quick to replay this one now that I've completed it. While it's nowhere near as bad as something like March of the Penguins on Game Boy Advance, it just had too many problems that kept it from being great. The makings of a good Looney Tunes game are here, it's just that the flaws kind of kept it from being as great as it could have been. I'm the Media Wiz, because one art form wasn't enough.
A Hollywood executive who's secretly evil? Should we be surprised?